Radha Devi Dasi from the Vaishnavi ministry, and we have been invited by the Ministry of Education to bring a group of ladies together to discuss the importance of reading Srila Prabhupada's books. So we have a wonderful panel, and I'm going to start by introducing them. First is Malati Devi Dasi. Malati joined ISKCON in San Francisco. She was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1967, and she has the wonderful glory of having found the first deities that came to the West in the form of very small Jagannath deities. Those were the template by which the first deities installed in ISKCON were actually carved. In 1968, she took her infant daughter and went with her husband and two other couples to the United Kingdom, where they met George Harrison and the Beatles. They recorded the Radha Krishna Temple album, which was a bestseller, top of the pops in England at the time. She traveled performing that music in Europe and also assisted in getting the Bhakti-Vedanta Manor Temple up and running. She then went to India, traveled with Srila Prabhupada, and actually served as his personal cook for some time. She also assisted in getting many of the deities that we still worship in ISKCON today. In 1990, she started an all-women's temple in Columbus, Ohio, and was actually honored by the Ohio Historical Society for starting the first Hindu temple in Ohio. And they noted how unique it was to have such a facility for women. In 1998, Malati joined the Governing Body Commission. Her region includes Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and Western Pennsylvania. She is a founding...
And a whole bunch more just got added.
Okay, that's a work in progress. More responsibility is just now coming. She's also a founding member of the Vaishnavi ministry. She has organized many retreats aimed at the spiritual advancement of Vaishnavis, and she's the co-author of Bond of Love, a 595-page book filled with reminiscences and realizations from Prabhupada's Vaishnavi disciples. Welcome, Malati. Our next guest is Narayani Devi Dasi, and she was a music student at Northwestern University when she joined ISKCON in 1970. She's also a disciple of Srila Prabhupada and has done many services throughout the years. She performed deity worship at the Calcutta Temple. She also traveled in Western Bengal on Sankirtan distributing books. She teaches the Bhakti-Shastrы, Bhakti-Vairbhava, and Bhakti-Vedanta courses and was instrumental in developing the BTE curriculum for the Bhakti-Shastrы. She's written a series of 15 books, which include Srimad Bhagavatam at a Glance and Bhagavad Gita at a Glance, both of which include photographs for each verse of those texts. Beautiful work, definitely worth living into. Welcome, Narayani. Last but not least, we have Panishari Lakshmi Devi Dasi, who grew up in ISKCON. Her father was personally converted from a Mayavadi understanding of the Vedas to the path of bhakti by Srila Prabhupada. Their family was the first Indian family to join ISKCON in the San Diego area in Southern California. She spent her summers as a teenager at the women's ashram in San Diego distributing books, and she was initiated by Jayapataka Swami in her 40s. She is a welcome lecturer. She serves as a pujari and a cook at our temple in San Diego. She also leads the Vaishnavi Sangha and established a Sunday school for the children using her expertise as an elementary school teacher. She holds the degree of Bhakti-Shastrы and is working on her Bhakti-Vairbhava degree. And she is an amazing mother who has raised 4 wonderful children. And I say that because I know them personally. So welcome to you all. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to start by asking each of you why you read Srila Prabhupada's books. What is it that this adds to your life? What instructions have you received from Srila Prabhupada or other devotees on reading the books? Anything you'd like to say just to get us started. Malati Prabhu, would you begin?
Krishna. Well, I can begin by saying that about my personal situation, that books were not available in the beginning beyond the first canto in 3 parts and then Easy Journey. And I read those, but we were in the beginning stages of an international movement. So as you mentioned, I traveled to the UK, had a baby, had the baby first, 6 weeks later went to the UK, and following that to India. And the books were always like one step behind us. And I didn't develop an actual like compelling taste to read the books from the beginning because they weren't there. We didn't have the electronic versions. And it's only been like in later years that I have found a taste and a desire to read the books. And I'm saying read the books because Srila Prabhupada wanted us to study the books. He said, like a lawyer studies the law books so he can stand before the judge and be able to defeat the opponent. He said, he knows the law books, chapter and verse. And he stated that he wanted us to also similarly read his books and become competent. And I have to very humbly admit that I'm not to that stage. But I have a heartfelt connection for reading his books. And whenever there's an opportunity, particularly when I give a class, which fortunately I get to do that quite often, the books are the go-to. And Prabhupada's words are so astounding and so compelling. And in particular, that first canto, when you read the purports, and you're like right there, these purports are right here and now. And then you realize, my God, he wrote these before he came to America. So it's just something that digs deep into my heart. And I hope one day I can be, maybe in another lifetime, become a more knowledgeable reader, following in the footsteps of Narayani Devi and your Panishari Lakshmi Devi Dasi. You know.
Thank you. Narayani Devi, could you speak on this for a moment?
Yes, well, it's my nature to read. From the age of 7, I went to the library and I was taking out stacks of books every week, and my goal was to read the whole library. But when I got Prabhupada's books, that was the end of the library. And because I could read them so many times and it would be different every time. Yeah. And so when I was in India, like Malati, the books weren't there. And so I would see people coming in for Gaur Purnima Festival with a book, and I beg the book from them. And that way I get the whole set of books. In Calcutta, I would just beg books from devotees coming in. So I got the whole set. And then later, I started teaching. So reading was one thing. I had burning desire to read. But then when I had to teach, I had to study. And that's a whole different thing. And what I learned in my study was that the Bhagavatam, the Gita, is to help us develop our appreciation for lessons in life. And when I was a teacher, I would be tested, not like the students. I would be tested on whatever I was reading. And whatever I was reading, it would happen in my life. Just like Devahudi, she went for a makeover. I went for a makeover, a health retreat. I was studying about the snakes in 10th canto, Kali and Aghasura. I was in Vrindavan. A snake came in my room when I woke up from a nap. So these things were happening. And then I was actually saved from death when I was teaching 4th canto, Dhruva Maharaj. So if there's time later on, I can tell what happened to me and how I was saved from death by reading Prabhupada's books.
Well, we definitely want to hear that. So we will come back to that.
Okay.
Thank you. Panishari.
I actually forgot your question. I was so involved in listening.
Please share why you read Prabhupada's books, or what special instruction you may have received on that.
Well, okay, so two things. So I had, as you said, raised in the movement, and we would read every morning. We would read Bhagavad Gita verse and Bhagavatam verse, and I think as a child, maybe we got to the third canto, and then I got married, and that was the end. But then in my late 40s, I decided that I really needed to start understanding Bhagavad. I mean, I want to become a devotee. I need to understand what it was. And I don't know how many times I started the first canto. It must have been at least 4 times that I've started the first canto. And it was very, very difficult for me. It was very, very difficult for me to get through the first canto. And I felt overwhelmed. So then I actually, that's why I took the Bhakti-Shastrы course, actually, because I wanted to have a systematic study. And because of that systematic study, I actually got a taste. So, and the reason you get this taste, I think one of the most, not only reading on your own, is Narayani Mataji saying, teaching, but even just reading with other people. And for me, and I was always a reader, so it's not that, I didn't like reading. I loved reading. I was also like Narayani Mataji at the library every day, every week, getting as many books as I could. And interestingly enough, even up to, my 30s, I would read novels all the time. But once I started reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, unknowingly, I just lost the taste for novels. Like I just could not, my kids would say, "Oh, you should read this book. It's really good." And I said, "Okay," and I'll start. But I would start it, but I could not, it would not, keep my attention. It just became so, wasn't interested, which to me was what shows the potency of Prabhupada's books, that I didn't even have to try to stop doing something. It naturally, just the desire, the taste for that just went away. That was for me the first wake-up call that I realized the potency of Srila Prabhupada's books.
Thank you. That's so inspiring. Yes. So at this point, I'm going to go back to Narayani, Devi, and ask you, please, how did the Bhagavatam save your life?
Okay, I was teaching how Dhruva Maharaj was fighting with the Yakshas. And then I went all the way up to the last, and I didn't finish the chapter. There was 1 verse left. And I had to go for a very simple procedure operation. And they gave me anesthesia. They gave me an overdose. So I was fighting for my life, they said. And I was conscious. Everything was black. And all of a sudden, I saw the holy name. And I lost my identity. I have no idea I was a person or a dog or anything. Just no idea. Everything was gone. Subtle body, identity, everything gone. And then I saw in the dark the holy name come in front of me like a screensaver. So I started chanting and I got my identity back. And I got so frustrated, how come I didn't go back to God? How come I'm in the void? But then gradually I did come back. It took some time. I couldn't see when I came back. I couldn't walk, everything. It took some time to get back. And then I was very curious about what I was studying, because usually I go, it happens to me when I'm studying. And I went back to Dhruva Maharaj's chapter. Okay, the last verse. What was the last verse that I didn't get to? If you chant Dhruva was bewildered, I was bewildered under anesthesia. And then the sages came and they said to Dhruva, just chant the holy name, it will save you from death. So that's what happened to me, that the last verse came, the holy name came and saved me from death. So I thought, oh, Krishna, all right, thank you. Thank you for that. That was the teacher's test, is that you do experience what you're teaching. If you say something, you'll get tested on it. So that's what happened to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Sometimes in japa retreats, we're encouraged to develop a personal relationship with the holy name. And I'm thinking, Narayani Prabhu, it sounds like we also can develop a personal relationship with Srimad Bhagavatam. Is that something that you have experienced or would like to comment on?
Oh, yes. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that chanting and the reading goes together. When I was teaching, I wouldn't understand a verse. And then I would chant one round. I would read the verse, chant one round, then I get all the understanding. Sometimes the whole chapter I wouldn't understand. I would chant all my rounds. And then I got a whole chart for the chapter. So it goes together. And as Prabhupada said, Sankirtan will make you happy and books will keep you convinced. So personal relationship, yes. You should, before you read, you can pray to Bhagavatam. You can offer obeisances to the people who you're going to associate with, like Arjuna or Shukadev, and pray that when you read, something relevant will come that you can personally apply in your life. And then after you read and you find a place or a word, and you go over, if that strikes you, you go over that word and that phrase. And then after you finish, you can offer obeisances. And that should be like in a quiet place, not, and that will help you develop personal relationship with Bhagavatam.
Wow, thank you very much for that. And I'm encouraged that this be a conversation. So if anybody else wants to say something on this topic or some thought is sparked, please just jump right in.
Yeah, I was just wanted to add to that. I think that one of the things that comes to my mind is that, developing that personal relationship, I think I see it myself when we are reading together. It's interesting that we will have a question. We read something, we have a question. Almost immediately, the next paragraph or the next verse answers that question. This has happened so many times, not just once, not just twice, almost every single solitary time. And it's interesting because, like I said, I co-facilitate a Vaishnavi Sangha where we actually read on Saturday evenings. And we started with, Srila Prabhupada's small books. And then now we're starting the Srimad Bhagavatam because the women wanted to read the Bhagavatam. So we read these books, and one of the Matajis will ask a question and we'll discuss it. And a lot of times we will be, if there's more people who have read farther up, they'll answer the question. But, almost every single solitary time, the next paragraph, Prabhupada has laid out the answer to that question. And we think, oh my God, we should have just finished reading the purport because it's right in there, and I just, as you said, a conversation, just wanted to add that is what also adds the relishing point for Bhagavatam is not only Mataji saying when you're teaching somebody or when you're reading together, it's nice to be able to stop and say, I wonder what that means. What did Prabhupada mean by that? Or what's happening in this? How does that apply to my life? And I think for myself and my co-facilitator, Varsana Mataji, who does this with me, that's what we relish, the back and forth among devotees who can bring their life experiences to the table when we're discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. I don't know, I might have gone off topic, but I just didn't want to lose my thought.
Sometimes people are a little put off by group discussion on a text because they feel like they might hear something that isn't Siddhanta, or, somebody might not understand and say the wrong thing. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, and I think it's a delicate balance. So for I think having another devotee with you who's had some experience can help you so you stay on track. But we always follow our basis is whatever we say, we make sure that we have sastric backing for that. So we don't say everything. We as facilitators don't say things off the top of our heads. We say that. Now, if somebody else brings something, many of these women might be new to Krishna consciousness. So they might come with other ideas and they want to give something. Now, we don't want to scare them away, nor do we want to be condemning. So I think having that open-hearted conversation to say, and deal with it in a nice way, being nice with people, acknowledging what they have said, and saying something like, well, actually, if you think about it this way, or well, Srila Prabhupada explains. So this way, you're not attacking them, you're not attacking their idea, because, we have to understand people come with different understandings, different backgrounds. And so you don't want to condemn them for that, right? We want to be able to reach them and explain to them the philosophy in a broader sense.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, we're here to talk about reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And, I think we all know that sometimes devotees struggle with this task. So what are some of the obstacles that you might have experienced or you might have seen others experience, obstacles that interfere with our reading?
Well, one is our lack of commitment to do so, because we have so many other things that have to be done. And quite often it's a fact, we have to do these things. But nonetheless, Prabhupada said our dog-like stubbornness, we have this lack of commitment. That's one thing. But other things could actually be related to health issues. For example, what I recently, last year, had cataracts removed. And suddenly I found it was a lot easier to see the pages. I didn't realize, but I didn't realize that at the time, how difficult it was. And that affected my ability to read. So it doesn't have to be cataracts, just have your eyes checked. Because if you have to struggle to read, you just, without realizing it, you don't read as easily, So that's just something from a personal experience I would mention. And take this how you will, but Prabhupada also stated that hearing is also reading. And for people that have a difficult time picking up the book and reading it for a long period of time, like Prabhupada actually had said, 2 hours a day, studied the books. And except for some rare individual like Narayani Devi Dasi, and there are rare individuals out there, for most of us, that's probably not going to happen. And then you're going to go around feeling guilty. But we can hear, we can put on tapes and we can hear. And that is another way, because there are now wonderful tapes of Prabhupada's books, of competent persons reading the books without interjecting anything of their own, just Srila Prabhupada's books. And that's, for many people, the only way they're at this point in their life that they are going to read. They'll read through hearing. I don't know, that's just a little comment. I wanted to say a small thing about, like Narayani was telling about how her life got saved. And I think all of our lives have ultimately been saved by Srila Prabhupada, one way or the other. But I was in a coma in 1989, around this time of the year, and the doctors told that I had 12 hours or less. And of course, I wasn't aware of any of this due to being in the coma. But devotees came and they were chanting. And even though I was in a coma, I heard the chanting. I didn't hear the doctors, the nurses, or any of the people around me. It was only hearing that I heard was this chanting. It pierced through the nescience. And in the same way, Srila Prabhupada's books pierce through the nescience. And they're a gift that can never be underestimated. So whether we pick them up and read them, which is wonderful because you can turn those pages back and forth, or we read them through hearing someone reading his books as they are. It's a gift that can never be depreciated or underestimated. So, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in here?
Yeah, I would like to say something here. like sometimes they say, oh, it's the same thing. We hear it over and over. So to break through that, you need to apply it to your life. Like when I was teaching Queen Kunti, every day we would have a certain homework. So one day Queen Kunti was saying, okay, whatever happens, it's mercy, you know, even the difficult things. So then I would give the homework, okay, now I want you to see how Krishna's mercy is coming in your life today. And we'll report back tomorrow. So you have a whole new way of looking at things if you apply, you know, what you read. And another thing I'd like to say is that what we asked His Holiness Mahavishnu, the elder who left his body, how to study Bhagavatam. How should we study? He gave us a verse. And I think this verse would be very helpful for reading also. And it's in the 12th canto, 13th chapter, verse 18. And it gives 3 things we should do with devotion. If we want to really study Bhagavatam, if you want to understand Bhagavatam, here it says, anyone who seriously tries to understand Bhagavatam, hears and chants with devotion becomes liberated. So there's, first is hearing, Shinvan, hearing, Supatan, chanting. Some people like to chant it. Like Prabhupada did say in one devotee's memories that if you chant a chapter of Bhagavatam every day for a year, you'll become a scholar. So I did that. I chanted like in the Sanskrit, not a whole chapter, just like prayers that I really liked here and there. I did that for a year. And after I started teaching Bhagavatam, so chanting, hearing, and the third thing is vicharana paro. You think about it. You be introspective. How does this apply to me? How does this apply to my life? And so that will get you off automatic pilot, you know, like we go, you read. Okay, I read it, finished. No, it goes beyond that, where we do have to apply it, think about it. How can I help others to understand this? How does this relate to my life? And so, yeah, I'd just like to share that about overcoming obstacles.
Yeah, that's really helpful. You know, Prabhupada said once that if someone reads Bhagavad Gita, they can become fully Krishna conscious.
Yeah.
And I always have to ask myself, you know, what am I doing wrong? Because I've definitely read Bhagavad Gita and I'm definitely not Krishna conscious yet. But I think what you said, you know, really brings that point home, that it's the contemplation, the introspection, and the application, which is a challenge. And I know for myself, sometimes I don't want to read Srila Prabhupada's books because I know he's going to tell me something that I don't want to do or encourage me to let my false ego go a little bit, and I don't want to do that. So I'm wondering if any of you have advice or experience on how to deal with that resistance, how to overcome that resistance.
I think the thing is that there's sometimes we read things in the Bhagavatam that don't really sit well with us. So somebody said something to me recently and said, just put that aside. I think it was during class, one of the class in Sunday school at Sunday Temple. And somebody said, you know, do you believe all these stories about, you know, about demons and, you know, churning the milk ocean and this and that? You know, you're coming from a, you know, Indian background, we've heard these stories all along. So we kind of have an understanding. But you're coming from a Western background, it's like, okay, it's all just like make believe or myth. So Prabhu was saying, just put that on the shelf. Like, let's put that on the shelf for now. So if there's certain things that you just don't sit well with you, kind of just put those aside and just keep reading. And likely as not, what will happen is they'll come in answer to that doubt, or you'll get more understanding as you go along that won't be an issue anymore. So, and I found that myself in some cases where I'll be reading something, I'm like, you know, I don't know if I like what he said, but as we keep reading the Bhagavatam and as we keep delving more and more, we get more of a understanding of what the meaning truly is and the depth of it, you know. And we need to understand that we're reading as conditioned souls. So our understanding is still as conditioned souls. So we have to come through that. We have to get, how do I say, I think as we go through the Bhagavatam, that conditioning slowly, slowly begins to melt away so that we become purified. And that's why Prabhupada says, start from the beginning and go through slowly, So that's, I can say, personal experience myself.
Prabhupada also addressed this directly or indirectly in a letter of April 3rd of 1969. And it was with regards to Nectar of Devotion, but to me, it can be applied to any book. So he said, each chapter you should read very carefully. And if you do not understand, read it repeatedly. Don't all of a sudden reading 1 or 2 pages, immediately question, Prabhupada, what is this? What is this? What is this? Go on reading. And the answers will automatically come. So this was similar to me in Srila Bhakti-Vinod you may be familiar with this little poem or this that he had written, chant anyway, chant anyway. That your mind is wandering all over the universe when you chant anyway. So in the same way, Prabhupada is saying, go on reading, and the answers will come. So there has to be a little, we have that resistance, that dog-like stubbornness, but go on anyway.
I recently heard Vaisheshika Prabhu say something about taking advantage, that we don't want to be on our deathbed thinking, I could have gotten out. I could have gone back to Godhead, but I missed the train. I missed the boat. So I guess that applies to our reading also, that, we don't want to be thinking, oh, I should have read more. Time to do it is now. Now, sometimes devotees will say that, the books are too hard to understand, and they'll say, well, I listen to Prabhupada's lectures, isn't that the same? Or, I read my spiritual master's books because I find them easier to understand. And, what's your response to those kind of statements?
Well, I would say the lectures are helpful to understand the books, because what I found when I was studying Prabhupada's books and to teach, I would study the lectures. And a lot of times there are commentaries on the verse that he had, the purports are extended, and he gives application. He gives a lot of application in his lectures. They complement the books. It's not like, if you hear the lecture, you don't have to hear the book. But I think if you hear the lecture, you might want to read the book. You might want to read the books, because they really are like a commentary, I find. An expanded commentary, and they were very helpful for me to understand, to teach, actually.
What I'm referring to more at this point in terms of the hearing is that there is media available that is only Prabhupada's books being read. And audiobooks, yes. So for persons who have a difficult time picking up and reading the books, this is what I'm suggesting that could be helpful. And there's systematic readings, the Bhagavatam, Nectar of Instruction, Nectar of Devotion, Bhagavad-Gita. And Radha, you mentioned how that Prabhupada said, by reading this Bhagavad-Gita. I heard something yesterday during class, and he said, everything is there in the Bhagavad-Gita, economics, it's there, different types of systems are there. It's all there in the Bhagavad-Gita. So yeah, if we read that Bhagavad-Gita, we are preparing ourselves for the eventuality of going back home, back to Godhead. But what I'm referring to by hearing is the straight reading of these books, audiobooks form.
Thank you.
And I think also the lectures, again, are just like a sound bite, right? So Prabhupada is, it's amazing when you do listen to Prabhupada's lectures, because he basically puts all the major points in one lecture, like he's got everything in a nutshell and he's trying to give everything like the pill right away. So that's a good thing. So that's like Narayani Mataji says, it should cultivate an interest for us to, and a lot of times it will do that. Srila Prabhupada's books themselves, I'm thinking in my head, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita stuff. The Srimad Bhagavatam, it has much more elaborate purports, right? There's more connection. I think that's what's more attractive. As a teacher and also as a mother, I think a lot of times storytelling is like the way to really kind of get started. So we may have a difficult time reading the Bhagavatam, but you can start with the Krishna book. That's why Srila Prabhupada gave you the Krishna. I just think Prabhupada is brilliant, because when I read his books, I realize, even when you realize the process in how he started translating the books, knowing how much time he might, not knowing when he'd have to finish his pastimes on this planet, right? Before he finished Srimad Bhagavatam, finishing the Krishna book and giving Krishna book. Krishna book is, the stories in there are, unbelievable, basically. And I think those kinds of things would make it easier. One thing that the analogy I like to think of is, as like I said, as a teacher, is, some people, when you give them a cupcake, they'll like lick off the frosting and then they'll go to the cake. Some people very meticulously will take off the wrapper and bite into it very nice. I have 4 kids, all 4 different personalities, all different mindsets. So, we have to understand what we are, what our mindset is like. If we just like the frosting, then go to Krishna book and read those stories. Prabhupada put the purports in the stories themselves. And then you might get like a curiosity, an interest. That's what gets kids, excited when you tell them a story. I'd like to share from my own personal example. When we used to go to the temple every Sunday, we would drive to the temple. And on the way to the temple, my dad would tell us a story every Sunday. Now, I didn't know at that time, obviously, I was a kid and hadn't read Srimad Bhagavatam, but they're all stories from the Srimad Bhagavatam. He would tell a story about King Bharat, and then he would tell about the deer. He would tell, of course, about Ajamila. So this is the way to attract anybody, not just children. I think anybody can be attracted by these stories. And particularly with the Indian background, we hear these stories all the time. But do we really understand the stories? How many times have I heard a Ajamila story? All I remember if Ajamila is he chanted Narayana at the time of death, and he was eventually liberated after a process. But so what is stuck in our head is all I have to say is chant Narayana or chant Krishna, whatever at the time. But there's so much more to the story. There's so much more depth, talking about prarabdha karma and removing the root. It's amazing when you can read the backstory, understand the inner meaning and not just read the story, because then it becomes mythology. It becomes just a story and there's no heart change. So, that's why I think, reading Srila Prabhupada's books is like, the icing on the cupcake.
Thank you. Now, I know as a young devotee, I tended not to read and to take instruction from other devotees as to what was in the Shastra. And I have to say that I was very surprised once I started reading more systematically, especially in regard to what the Shastras say about women and what Srila Prabhupada had to say about women, because he has said a great many different things, and it's easy to pick out just those statements that align with whatever we're trying to persuade somebody about. But the actual viewpoint is much more nuanced and complicated. And I just wonder if you have any experiences or thoughts about what it means for Vaishnavis in particular to study the scripture, or what we can bring to the study of the scripture that may be special or unique.
I was going to say we could defend Srila Prabhupada more appropriately, because things are taken out of context many, many times. And we need to understand the whole picture. And also we as women need to understand our strengths. When I hear these comments, there's one thing that comes to my mind. I was raised in the US, right? So, when slavery was in practice, they would use the Bible in order to justify that whole system. So, but we know that was not the essence, right? So so we have to remember that also, that, you can, if you want to, you can twist anything the way you want. So we need to be able to, as Vaishnavis, we need to be able to understand what is in the scripture, what Srila Prabhupada is saying from the beginning all the way through, so that we can actually defend our position, in whatever situation that may arise. I think it's empowering in myself. So.
Yeah, when I was a new devotee, I read Bhagavad Gita. Okay, women are less intelligent. I said, okay, less intelligent. What else? And then I kept going and going. Then I came to Bhagavatam and said, oh, there's no impediment. Okay, even if I'm less intelligent for spiritual life, it doesn't matter. And that was Prabhupada's mood. That, yeah, okay, if you keep your materialistic mindset, there's going to be obstacles. You might show up as less intelligent, but on the spiritual platform, everyone's equal and everyone has an equal chance. And that's what I understood with chanting, because in the second canto, it says, in Bhagavad Gita, intelligence is coming from the super soul. So when I would chant, I would understand, okay, I'm connecting with super soul. I may not have enough intelligence, but now I'm connecting with super soul. So there's an ocean of intelligence there, and I experienced that. And that's how I could, when I was teaching Bhagavatam, if I didn't understand something, okay, I'm less intelligent. Okay, let me chant, and then connect with super soul, and then get the intelligence. So if you stay on the spiritual platform, then you can have unlimited intelligence. Doesn't matter what your conditioning is. Your conditioning may be this or that, but when you're practicing devotional service, nothing can stop you. And I understood that by reading Prabhupada's books.
That is such an important point. And I think maybe this is the first time I've ever had the realization that I should ask Krishna to enlighten me rather than trying by my own power to wring the meaning out of the scriptures. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Malati Prabhu, did you want to add something?
Well, we should definitely avoid trying to adjust to the worldview, which is nowadays something that is really popular and can really cause us to plunge deeper into darkness, as they say. And if we're thinking, just like Srila Prabhupada told Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, well, if you're thinking like this, because he was experiencing what we nowadays refer to as racism within our movement. And Prabhupada said, well, if you're thinking like that, then you're also wrong. That, you're thinking black, white, woman, or that's also wrong because it's based on bodily connection. So Srila Prabhupada was so ahead of the time. And there are some bewildering statements for those who are connecting on the bodily level. That's a fact. But as we read and we connect more with the spiritual level, as Narayani was explaining very wonderfully, then these bewildering statements become less bewildering. And if we just sit and read, and as Prabhupada said, then read again, then the bewilderment diminishes.
Well, as we're winding up, I want to ask you, as leaders, as teachers, what can we do to help foster a culture of reading in our communities?
Yeah.
So isn't this the sorry, Malati, please.
No, I just wanted to say I appreciated that Panishari Lakshmi was, Devi was saying that she has regular reading groups. And I'm part of one group that reads regularly, just reads without, there's time for commenting, but otherwise we're just reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And that just pulls you in. It pulls you in by hearing Srila Prabhupada's words. So these reading groups among women are really powerful. They're very potent and highly advised, highly recommended.
I think also a reading buddy is good. So you might not be comfortable with a whole group of women, but you can always find somebody and say, hey, do you want to read together? And it's, and it could be, you don't have to be as you're an advanced person. There's no need to be discussed to try to figure out the right person. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking, it's like when you're going out to play and you say, hey, do you want to be my friend? Right? What do you want? Do you want to play with me? So it's like that. Just say, hey, do you want to read with me? I'm just, deciding to read this book. And I was wondering if anybody would like to read with me, and ask your friends, ask other devotee women. A lot of times I find that women think they don't have the time or feel they don't have the time. But if you say that, hey, I have a reading engagement, I read every day and it doesn't have to be long. It can be a half an hour. It can be 20 minutes. When I was doing the Bhakti-Shastra course, when I'm doing the Bhakti-Shastra course, my reading buddy, as I call her, has 2 kids. She homeschools. So she would call me and says, okay, I have 20 minutes now. Can you have 20 minutes? I said, yeah. So we'd read, or we wouldn't have time. She goes, oh, I can't do it right now. How about tomorrow night? So, make a time, just, have it in your head that I want to read at least one verse. I know my Guru Maharaj's instruction, and that was partly another reason why I became more diligent in my study, is because he first of all wants us to get all the Bhakti-Shastra, Bhakti-Vairbhava, all these degrees. But he says every day he's posted things and says, okay, I read this verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam tonight. And I'm working toward my Bhakti-Shastra degree. My Guru Maharaj is saying this. I'm working toward my Bhakti-Shastra degree. I mean, does he need it? His own is Jayapataka Swami. Does he really need a Bhakti-Shastra degree, right? But, how what they say, what great men follow, others, what great men do, others follow. So my Guru Maharaj says, okay, I will get my Bhakti-Shastra degree. So that's what he's doing. So anyway, I don't know why I went on to that. But anyway, basically, a reading buddy helps. Bake yourself a little thing that's saying, okay, I'm going to, read one verse a day. Anytime during the day, make a commitment to yourself, one verse a day, 1 page a day is enough. I remember that one of my god sisters was saying that when she first got married, I can't remember if it was Pankajangri Prabhu or Janivas Prabhu had said that if you read 1 page or even 1 line of Bhagavatam every day before you go to sleep, your marriage will be perfect. So, make a commitment to yourself that you'll just read 1 page or 1 line or 1 verse, and then let Krishna do his magic, because he does it all the time. He does that magic all the time. You'll see it. You'll see it.
Thank you. Narayani Prabhu, did you want to add something?
So of course the reading groups, and I also take part when I'm in the area, when I have the proper time zone, because I'm traveling. I do join those reading groups. And another thing I do is when I give Bhagavatam class, I glorify the book. I glorify, like one class I just gave, I glorified the whole Srimad Bhagavatam using a prayer of Sanatana Goswami, where he says, he's my guru, he's my friend, he's my companion, he's Bhagavatam. And so then, and all the beautiful things about Bhagavatam, how he's my guru, how he's my companion. And the one thing I found in Tapas was that there are 3 ways of teaching, of 3 kinds of literature. And there's the Vedas, which are very heavy, and then there's the Puranas, which are more like a friend, And then there's the poetic, which is like a lover. And Srimad Bhagavatam is all three. So it can instruct you really heavily. Okay, like the second verse. Okay, we kick out all cheating religions here. Or like the Puranas, you hear these beautiful stories about the lives of devotees. Or like the gopis, who are the lovers. So you get everything in Bhagavatam. So then I like to encourage devotees to read, because just by explaining these different things, what you can get from reading these books, they're very special. Yeah.
Also,
and I'm an example. I read too.
Yeah, I think that's so important. The example that we set. Yeah. Malati Prabhu.
yes, Prabhupada, two points. Prabhupada wrote in a letter in March 77, in March, 77, that was his final year with us. He said, therefore, we are writing so many books, and unless we take care of the books and preach and read ourselves, understanding the philosophy, this Hare Krishna will be finished within a few years, because there will be no life. How long can one artificially go on? Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. He said that will be artificial, no life. So reading and understanding the philosophy is essential. Otherwise, the taste won't develop. And if we just consider how Srila Prabhupada was traveling constantly, so many phone calls, so many letters, so many problems. I mean, I have to remind myself of this when I think I'm overwhelmed by, what's going on, that Prabhupada did not have it easy. And we see how there he was on his deathbed, speaking the beautiful purports. He could not even raise his head. He could not hold the microphone. Somebody had to hold it for him. And he was speaking these purports, giving us our real life. So the least we can do is somehow or other try to read his books.
Very powerful. Very powerful. Yeah. Not only do we need to enliven ourselves so we can do our service, but just in gratitude, we can take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srila Prabhupada worked so hard to give it to us. All right.
His lifeblood, right?
Yeah, his lifeblood.
His lifeblood, right? I mean, that's what he says. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too when you were saying about why we read Srila Prabhupada's books, is also to strengthen our faith, right? Because we have so many doubts, and otherwise we'll just become sentimentalists. Like Malati was saying, just chanting Hare Krishna, we really need to know, understand, and we are a preaching movement after all, right? And I have to say, as parents, and I'm speaking as a parent, a grandparent, it is so important for us, even on the material platform, in the sense of just teaching moral values to our children. It is so important for us to take these books as a way to teach. Everybody has difficulties. It comes in the material world, right? In the first canto, Bhishma Dev says that to the Pandavas. You come to the material world, you're going to have problems. It's a package deal, and we have so many examples of devotees in the Srimad Bhagavatam who have gone through so many things. We have so many people in movement itself, in the Lila Amrita, who explain so many problems that they had to go through, and Prabhupada went through. But what kept him strong was his knowledge and of the scripture. And this is what will help us and help our children, maneuver in this material world, because we need something. We need something that will strengthen our faith. We need something that will guide us. And that is what Srila Prabhupada has given us with these books.
Narayani Prabhu, any final thoughts from you before we close?
Well, I have a story, but I heard it. I didn't experience it directly. It is secondhand. I heard it many times, how a person was again saved from death by reading Prabhupada's books and became a devotee. There was a book distributor who distributed a book to one man. He took it home. His roommate was a drunkard. The drunkard read one line, or for the soul, there's no birth or death. Then he threw it and he said, rubbish. Then came came his near-death experience. He was taken by the Yamadutas, went to Yamaraj, and he's Yamaraj, you're very sinful, you must suffer. What do you have to say for yourself? What are you going to do now? And the man remembered the line from Bhagavad Gita, for the soul, there's never birth or death. He said, okay, go back. I give you another chance. He read the whole Gita, became a devotee, became a brahmachari, and joined the temple. So, yeah, it's really important. If you just even read one sentence, and Prabhupada even told Srila Kirti, if you just read one word in Krishna book, you'll become Krishna conscious. Yeah.
One other quick one about Krishna book, that our god sister Danishta, who is, still out there, she drives Uber with a big pile of Prabhupada's books. She distributes books to everyone who gets in her car. She distributes books still on the street. Anyways, she was cleaning his room in the San Francisco Temple and Mission, in the Mission. And Prabhupada was there, and he went out on the walk, so she went in to clean the room. And then somehow he came back a little early, and she was still in the room, but at the back of the room, so he didn't immediately detect her presence. So she's trying to leave the room, and suddenly she realizes, wait a minute, I'm here with Prabhupada. I can ask him any question that I want. And the question she was asked him was, Srila Prabhupada, because she didn't get to see him very often, how can I get to know you better? And his answer was, read Krishna book.
Wow. All right.